Have any of you ever played the game Cross the Line? It's usually used in group bonding sessions or diversity trainings. Anyway, how you play is everyone stands on one side of the line, and when the facilitator makes a comment that applies to you, you cross the line. For example, cross the line if you are extremely nervous right now. Obviously, I would have to cross. The next step of the game is those who have crossed the line make a statement to those on the other side. Mine would probably go something like, "It doesn't mean I'm not really excited to be speaking at TEDx." The purpose of this game is to create understanding in light of difference. But what often tends to happen is a clear division is created between a group of people, rather than allowing them to embrace diversity in a productive way. I've also seen this game played in daily social interactions. We often tend to identify with people who have shared experiences than us, people who are like us, rather than looking on the other side of the line and trying to understand those who are different than us. When the statements get really personal, there's this notion that you are not like me. It alienates people and creates the idea of the other, and this us versus them dynamic occurs. Needless to say, I've played cross the line quite a bit, and I'm not a huge fan. What I am proposing to you all today is a new set of rules to play by and to live by. Cross the line is really about what you identify with. How do you define your identity? Now, let me rewind. During my junior year at Clark University, I had the wonderful opportunity of studying abroad in Cape Town, South Africa, and confront my own identity in a really big way. So I grew up in a really small town in upstate New York with little social, racial, and class diversity. I think you all get the picture. I had always been passionate about the issues that plagued our world, but it wasn't until I studied abroad that I truly began to invest myself in being part of the solution. The solution which I believe in, and I want to share with you all today, is one of equity rather than equality, one of genuine sympathy rather than misplaced empathy, and one in which we embrace difference rather than mask it. While I was in Cape Town, I worked at an organization for women and children infected with and affected by HIV/AIDS. On a daily basis, I was immersed in a community where I was seen as a minority. This honestly may have been the first time that I asked myself what my identity truly meant. What does being American really mean? What does being white really mean? And what does being female really mean? There is power in identity. I would formally like to apologize to all of you that I never asked myself those questions sooner. What I'm asking you all today is to become more aware of those identities, of your own, of others, and what the implications may be. This is something I'm currently trying to navigate as a white woman. Now, at this point, some of you may be sitting here thinking, I still don't get it. My one experience in South Africa does not compare to the real experiences of minorities. And I must admit that, in fact, this is where my talk begins. All of my life, I've been trying to relate to people from different backgrounds than me, people on the other side of the line. I've tried to relate to them by saying, I understand what you're going through. Sympathize with them. When in actuality, I really don't. I may not understand the real experiences of minorities because, being white in the current social climate of our country, I have inherent privileges. And due to this fact alone, minorities fight for a kind of equality that I don't fight for. Yes, as a woman, I might fight for equal pay, but they fight for so much more. And so true, I may not relate to their same experiences, but I sympathize with you. Now, before you kick me off stage, hear me out. I sympathize with you because I am female. We are female, and we should not be divided sisters. The concept of divided sisters has extensive historical relevance in our nation. As some of you may know, in the 1920s, women stepped into a new movement and fought for the right to vote. But then the proposed 15th Amendment essentially denied suffrage solely because of race alone. It actually wasn't until the 1960s that some African American women could freely exercise to vote in southern states. So at the time, white suffragists thought, well, white women gaining the right to vote without black women is still a step in the right direction. But how can we progressively move forward together when some are still being left behind, left on the other side of the line, so to speak? We shouldn't leave each other behind. That's not what sisters do. We white women first need to recognize that we all play a different role in achieving equity between women. So then, what is the white female role? It begins with understanding. When we are divided by difference, look at those on the other side and say, I see you, I feel for you, and I want to stand by you. I want to stand with you. So how can I greater understand? What do you need from me to be your ally? We have to ask, and then we have to act. Now, with this understanding may come some discomfort. Take this discomfort and do something with it. Turn it into rage, not pity. Insert yourself in change and be proactive. Join the revolution towards a greater humanity that we all know is possible. When it comes to the intersection of race and gender, you may be on the other side of the line and not identify with this injustice. Often, what tends to happen is we walk the line. We see those on the other side affected by it, but we don't know how to insert ourselves in the solution. So then, what do we do when we can't cross the line, when we don't personally identify, when we are stuck in between being passive and being proactive? Often, we tend to think we have to have gone through an experience to relate to it. That's not necessarily the case. We may not have gone through an injustice, but it doesn't mean we can't be outraged by an injustice. So what can we do when we see injustice? Yes, we can speak out against racism, against sexism, against ageism, against discrimination. But perhaps the most powerful action of all is reflection. During my senior year at Clark, I was a peer advisor for incoming students and leading a session on sexual abuse and violence. During the session, a student made a statement that went something along the lines of, I'm sorry, but when females wear short skirts and revealing clothes, they are asking for it. What do they expect anyway? Clearly, this comment took me off guard, but instead of pointing out how obviously sexist and offensive this was, I asked the student to reflect on what they had just said. I told him there was an event later that week that I wanted him to go to with me. It was a march for survivors of sexual abuse. Once he heard their stories and reflected on his own misunderstanding, he confronted his bias. There's that saying, when you see something, say something. Well, I don't think saying something is really enough. Yes, when we see injustice, we should say something. But we also have to act. This may take the form of a walkout or a sit-in, but actions really do speak louder than words. So right now, some of you may be sitting here thinking, this isn't my problem. I'm not a racial minority and I'm not a woman either. I'm here to tell you it's really all of our problems. Daily social interactions shape the current social climate of our present and the projection of our future. That is your problem. We are all accountable for the current social climate in which we live. And we must create a supportive community for women of all colors, not one that places value on one specific identity or one set race, but rather embraces and encompasses all identities. We white women often tend to identify more with feminist movements rather than race movements. Because we don't share that personal experience of injustice of race, we assume we can't have a productive role in addressing the topic at all. But addressing both cohesively is really crucial. The intersection of race and gender is often a misunderstood topic. And not only that, it's really rarely discussed. And I want to start with you all today. So if you're willing, feel free to participate by raising your hands, and I want to play our new version of Cross the Line. Cross the line with me if you've ever felt discriminated against because of your age, race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, or ethnicity. Look around. Instead of making a statement, I want you all to think, what can I do to greater understand? Because I see you, and I want to stand by you. Okay, we're gonna play once more. Cross the line with me if you are human. Obviously, this is something we can all connect with. If we remember our humanity and cross the line together, whether we are standing because we are personally affected or we are standing by others in solidarity, we are taking a step into revolution. This is our task. It is not an easy one, but it's really worth fighting for. The isiXhosa people in South Africa have a saying, or rather, a way of life, Ubuntu. This literally translates to humanness, but the common definition is, I am because we all are. I am human because of you, and you, and you, and you. Embracing each individual, each identity, each race, and each story. Now, isn't that something we should all live by? Thank you.